Hi everyone, my name is Diego Simijaca, and with the doctors Viviana Moncada and Robert Looking, we are sharing today the results of the first assessment of three categories of lichenized fungi species in Colombia. Then geographical contrasting conditions is resulting in a differentiation of great variety of ecosystems with an enormous biodiversity. We have, for example, dry forest on the northern part of Colombia, páramos on the Andean region of Colombia, wetlands in eastern or Orinoquia region, and in other places of Andean region and the Pacific region, we have lowland wet forest. With those ecosystems, I can say you that Colombia is a mega diverse country with, for example, the first place in birds and orchids, the second place in vascular plants, freshwater fishes, third place in palms and reptiles, and fourth place in mammals biodiversity. And also, I need to say you that Colombia is a fungal diverse country with more than 7,000 fungal species and more than 2,000 lichen species. There are some well-studied regions in Colombia like Andean region, but despite of this intensive exploration, other researchers are working in different places of Colombia and in different regions, as in the case of Elier Soto in the Pacific region with more contributions to the records and new species in this place, or the case of Lady Vargas and Lady Herrera contributing to the records of Cora and Cladonia species in eastern or Orinoquia region, and the case of Rochi Peláez and Robert Looking with new species of Ocellularia to this region. Eventually, Caribbean region has been studied, and more contributions are knowledge contributed to Robert Looking, and also Andean region have contributions to Luis Coca and Viviana Moncada. Unfortunately, this lichen diversity and those ecosystems are impacted by several human activities and threatened by infrastructural projects, transforming those ecosystems in these situations and impacting lichens directly and indirectly, impacting biodiversity of lichens. Additionally, in Colombia, only one instrument of protection to the harvest of lichens are knowledge today, and this instrument can be revoked if one infrastructural project is necessary on the Colombian territory. As I said, we have only one instrument of protection of lichen species in Colombia, because in the resolution that is documenting the threatened species in Colombia, this ordinance or this document is without lichens. Then we acknowledge the different lichen species and the treatment over the different species. As an antecedent of the assessment of lichen species traits, we only know the work of Aguirre and Rangel with 1841 lichen species assessed, but in this case, several names are invalid or without samples in Colombia. In the recent publication of Looking on 2021, we know that several of the species used in this work are without samples in Colombia. Then a direct assessment of treated categories of Colombian lichens has not yet been done, and indirectly we only know two species assessed and published in the IUCN list. To achieve the assessment, then we established two principal objectives: prioritize and evaluate the risk of extinction of potential endemic lichenized fungi species in Colombia, and contribute to the decision-making on environmental policies based on endangered lichen species. To achieve these objectives, we select a subset of 151 species based on restricted infrared distribution and potential endemism. And we ask about herbaria databases where they are consulted and distribution of species was compiled. We use data of UDBC, FAUC, CUVC, and herbaria in Colombia. And additionally, we consult the Catálogo de Plantas and Lichenes de Colombia. With this information, records were standardized and arranged in Darwin core format. And with this information, we here reference the different samples. With the information of here references, we calculate the extent of occurrence and the area of occupancy in CONAR in our studio. After in a workshop with lichenologists of Colombia and with IUCN experts, we validate and reassess some species with the information of the maps and the distribution of the different species. We contrast this information with licensed infrastructure projects and protected areas in Colombia. And following IUCN criteria, we assess and categorize the different selected species. As a result, we have 706 entries for 151 species. And we found that Sticta impressula was the most recorded species with 61 entries, and Rhabdodiscus recondicus was the most extended species. And we recognize several traits to the different species. Several traits are related with agricultural activities, for example, annual and perennial non-timber crops, or biological resources as logging of wood. Eventually, railroads and utility service lines as electrical lines are impacting the different species of lichens, and less impact activities are oil gas drilling and fire suppression. I have to highlight that this information is available on SEIBA and GeoNetwork platforms to the Humboldt Institute. As a result of assessment, we have 56 species as critical endangered, 19 species as endangered, and 10 species as vulnerable, and near than 30% of species in least concern. One of the species is Sticta impressula as least concern, Igmadophila versa, Cora planata as near threatened, inhabiting some páramos in Colombia, joined by Lobariella flavomedulosa, founded in some páramos and high mountain forest. Other species are Lobariella reticulata, categorized as or assessed as endangered, and Lepidostroma callocerum, affected by some agricultural activities, for example. Also, among critical endangered species, we can find Fissurina linoana, Phaeographis gallianoae, related to the Caribbean region, Cora setosa and Cora undulata in eastern region and meta state, and Ocellularia umbilicatodes and Ocellularia unicolor in eastern region. Each one of these species are related with one ecosystem assigned in the ecosystem red list as critical or as endangered ecosystem. Unfortunately, these ecosystems have several service laws and is eventually a risk of extinction exists over those different species. For example, in the northern part of Colombia, the dry forest is categorized as a critical endangered ecosystem, and Fissurina linoana and Phaeographis gallianoae inhabit those ecosystems. Here is necessary to highlight different efforts and initiatives to the lichen species or lichen traits assessment as the IUCN specialist group, reaching the objective of more than 200 species with 237 species globally assessed. For South America, we have 83 assessed species, and for Colombia, additionally to the previously 151 species assessed or preliminary assessed, we have 54 species as proposed. Those information is available in the Global Fungal Red List initiative, keeping other groups of fungi, but essentially 54 species proposes to the next assessment in Colombia. And also, I highlight the cold fungi effort with making accessible different information about lichens and fungi in Colombia. And finally, some recommendations and conclusions. This is the first exercise allowed Colombian lichenologists to learn about assessment of threatened species. The prioritization and evaluation of species is focused on Andean region. Therefore, it's necessary to expand the evaluation across the other regions in Colombia, prioritizing other of the red-listed ecosystems. Ecosystem health indicator species must be included in future assessments, not only endemic species, but this is advanced in the work of knowledge of threatened species in Colombia, and efforts of government and research institutions must be focused on strengthening the revision of herbaria in different regions of Colombia to improve their identification, perform georeferencing, and achieve standardization of information. Finally, I say thanks to Humboldt Institute in Colombia, facilitating the agreement with Colombian governors, and I say thanks to different herbaria to provide data for the assessment. I say thanks to the assessor team, Margarita Jaramillo, Luis Coca, Edier Soto, to allow us to perform the exercise, and the assessment coordinators, Carolina Castellanos and Nelson Salinas. And thanks you for your time.